Hello everyone, Eric Olsen from Helps YouTube Live. Welcome to our YouTube channel today, June 9th, 2025. My name's Eric, founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay. Our most important message to seniors is that your Social Security, your pension, your disability, your VA benefits are protected. It can't be taken from you. It's available for your needs, and you're going to be okay. I'm assuming you can hear me. Looks like you can. So I got a call from an existing client this morning, and he said they took my Social Security out of my bank account. I was garnished, and he was in the hospital. And I asked him, "Well, when did you find out about it?" He said, "Friday." And I told him, "Well, okay. The way it works, and you've heard me talk about this before if you've been listening to me for a while. Since 2012, there was a rule put into place that tells banks that if they get a writ of garnishment, they're to automatically examine where the money came from in your bank account. And if it came from a federal source, such as Social Security, they take that sum and they times it times two and automatically protect that without you having to do anything. So in this guy's case, he got 1,100 in Social Security. That's all he got. And I said, "How much was in your bank account?" He says, $1,100. They said, "Well, as long as there's less than $2,200 in there, they didn't take anything." "Well, yes, they did, Eric. Well, I told them the reason was they got it on Friday, and technically under the law, they have 48 hours to examine the account to determine if the money came from a protected source, like Social Security or a federal pension or a VA benefit or U.S. Post Office is a federal benefit or a railroad worker. But most people it's Social Security." And I explained to him that, usually they do it within 4 to 8 minutes. But once in a while on Friday, maybe there's not enough people in the bank office at that time. And so they wait. They delay it and do it on Monday. Doesn't happen very often, but if I ever get a call with a person having a problem like this, it's on Mondays that we get this call. And he said, "No, they took it out on the 30th, and it's been over a week." And I said, "No, I'm not so sure." And so I told him to go to the bank, double check it. I'm pretty sure he's going to find out that the money's, I told him, I said, the money should be released by this afternoon or tomorrow morning, if not sooner. He called me from the West Coast, and the banks had just opened then. And I said, you got to give him a few minutes to open up and get you the so his income is going to be, and I told him if he did have a problem, call back and we'd get it solved, but I doubt he will. In other words, if someone sues you and they get a judgment against you, and as long as you have just one bank account, and that's the account to which your Social Security goes, then twice that sum is going to be automatically protected by your bank, regardless of what other monies are in there. And then he said, "Well, I'm going to go down and talk to my bank manager about this." And I told him, I said, "Well, you can do that, but your bank manager probably doesn't know what the rule is. But there's a department in the bank that deals with garnishments. They know the rule." I don't think I've yet talked to a bank manager that understands the rule, okay? And I would guess that 999 out of 1,000 attorneys don't understand this rule, even though it's been in effect since 2012, okay? Because it totally changed how everything worked for seniors to be able to automatically protect their income in their bank account from garnishment. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat feature. I'll try to address them. I will do my best. Mrs. H, aren't banks liable for letting someone into your bank like what just happened to that person you spoke on? How is that possible? Well, like I explained, under the rule, they have 24 hours or 24, business days, 48 hours, 2 business days to look at your bank account to determine if the money came from a protected source and to automatically protect it. So if they got the garnishment on Friday morning at, let's say, 10 o'clock in the morning. That would give them to the end of the day Friday, probably to the end of the day till 10 o'clock on Tuesday would be 48 hours. So no, they haven't done anything technically wrong. And that's why if I get these calls, it's usually on Monday if we get these calls, and we tell people just to be patient, the money will be released, and we never get a call back. And I'll be surprised if this guy calls back. I told him if there's a problem, call us back, we'll get it sorted out for you. But you won't. He'll realize that they're going to release the funds. So there's not a problem with it. There used to be a problem with credit unions. They were a little slow on the uptake on following this rule that went into effect in 2012, but they're pretty good now. Although we did have an exception last week with some credit unions on the Oregon coast. Okay, they had three branches, like I think Tillamook, Astoria, and I don't know, Seaside, something like that. And we might have to deal with them, but most of the banks and credit unions, they're on board with this rule. So Cindy's asking, just received my first lawsuit. Could you explain more in detail what happens if a creditor places a lien on my home? Would it make any difference if I remove my name off of the deed? Well, okay. I'll explain what happens. So if you get sued, that means a creditor you owe money to files a lawsuit, normally in the county where you live, in the state where you live. And the lawsuit, normally it's called a summons and complaint. They knock on your door and serve you with the paperwork. And the paperwork explains that, you know, if you want to defend the lawsuit, what you need to do. And then that's the summons. And then the next part is the complaint, which explains who you owe money to, how much you owe. And then they ask for a judgment. Okay. And normally the summons and complaint gives you a time period to file an answer or to contest the lawsuit if you intend to contest it. Now, most seniors, the vast majority, they owe the money. Okay. And so they really don't have a defense, and they don't need to file an answer. And if they do nothing, then eventually the creditor will get a judgment. It might take them several months or even longer. Okay. Now, if there's a date for you to appear in court, if you read that carefully, it's only if you're going to contest the lawsuit. If you're not going to contest it, you don't need to go to court. They'll eventually get a judgment. Now, if they get a judgment, in most states, a judgment becomes a lien on real property. That means that means dirt, or a home on dirt, home on land. Okay? And normally it's a judgment, home on land, in the county where the judgment is located. Now, it's not a lien on a specific piece of property. It's just a lien on any property that you might owe. So if you own 3 pieces of property, it'd be a lien on 3 pieces of property. But most people just have a home. Now, but it doesn't describe your property. And the only way it becomes a problem is if you go to sell the home, then it can crop up on a title report. But say, excuse me, say for example, Cindy, you own the home with someone else, your husband, for example. If you own it together, you own it jointly with survivorship rights, almost always if you're married, which means if you were to pass away, then the property would automatically go to your husband. And if the judgment is just against you, the judgment goes away. Okay. Judgment only a lien on property you own, and if you die, then your interest in the property automatically goes to your husband. Boom. He gets the property without any lien. So if you had children's name on the property with you, by the same token, the property would automatically go to the kids at your death. The lien drops off because when you die, you no longer own the property. The property transfers by operation of law to your children, if that's how you own it with joint tenants. They call it jointly. If you own it jointly with survivorship rights. So you really don't need to remove your name from the deed. And then there's also different states have different rules. I mean, for example, in Florida, unless you own over so many acres, you can still sell the home and have a lien removed. There's a process for doing that. It's fairly easy. Same way in Texas. In California, they have you can file what's called a homestead. It's a piece of paper with the county. And that means if you get a judgment, it doesn't attach as a lien to the home. And other states have similar provisions. We don't run into that. Now, even and we can go over that with you, but there shouldn't be any problem. Okay, Lori asked, if I get a part-time job and have to pay direct deposit, is it protected as long as it's less than 2? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. As long as it's less than twice the amount of your Social Security, it's protected automatically. Now, let's say it was more than that. Would it be protected? Probably. It depends. Okay, so there's a federal law that protects a minimum of $217.50 net, $217.50 net per week in wages. Net, that's after taxes are taken out, in every single state. But there's a lot of states that protect more than that every week. Some states don't even permit a garnishment of wages. Okay, and in order for someone to garnish your wages if you're working, first they'd have to sue and get a judgment, and then they'd have to know where you're working. It's not easy to find out where someone's working. It's not on your credit report. And if you're self-employed, it's not there. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Last week, a client called, and they were self-employed, and they weren't working for wages. In other words, when you're self-employed, you're like a 1099 employee. It means that your employer doesn't have any control over you. They don't take taxes out, and you can work your own schedule. And this person, that's what this person did. They worked their own schedule, and they were a 1099 employee. It was like they worked whenever they want, and the employer would just pay them a gross amount, and then that person was responsible for paying their own taxes. Well, they were worried because their employer got a writ of garnishment on the wages. And they called me, and we have an attorney in California, and I called our attorney in California. She wanted to see a copy of the wage garnishment, and sure enough, it was a garnishment of wages. And so this person was not a waged employee, so the garnishment really technically was not effective against this person. It had, they weren't a waged employee. So the employer isn't going to have to pay anything. Now, if they would have filed another type of garnishment against the employer, then they could have taken the money that the person had. But they didn't do that. And they'll probably never figure that out. We'll see what happens. But we know what to do, whatever the problem is, okay? So, I encourage our seniors, if you want to go to work, go to work. We don't run into problems with our clients getting actually wages garnished. And if you did make more and it wasn't protected by under state law, there's things that could be done, okay? I'm really worried about hearing that man's story regarding his bank garnishing his Social Security. Oh, no. The only reason it happened is it happened on Friday, and the bank didn't have time to check it to see that it came automatically from where the money came from. And so Monday it'll get released. Okay. Helps, we've got thousands of clients. And so, it's not unusual, it's not common, but our clients occasionally someone will sue them, get a judgment, and they'll try to garnish their bank account if they can find out where it is. We just don't. You're not going to lose your money. Your bank protects it automatically. So please don't get worried, Robert. The only reason I'm telling you that story is to let you know why you shouldn't be worried. Not because I want you to worry. I don't want you to worry. Okay? Colleen says, if your account is held up by debt collectors and checks get, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. Okay. The checks get rejected like rent, utilities. What can one do? Checks bounce. Well, you probably know what I'm going to say. Eric, if the Martians come for dinner on Saturday night and I don't know what to feed them, what am I going to do? Okay. Well, if you're worried about the Martians coming for dinner Saturday night, you don't need to worry about your account being held up. Okay. They're not going to bounce your check. The bank isn't in that instance. Um, that won't happen. That won't happen. I've never had that happen when the bank is examining the account to see if it came from a protected source. Uh, when this rule first went into effect in 2012, that was when HELPS was brand new. So I've kind of like grown up with this rule. It was a great rule this put into effect. I mean, before then, you can imagine what it was like. Seniors were getting garnished, and a lot of them didn't realize their income was protected. They could file paperwork to get it released. Now, with this new rule, it's just automatic. The bank looks at your bank account, and if it came from a federal source, we protect twice that without you having to do anything. Now, if you happen to have more than that in there, it's still protected. You have to file paperwork to get it released. But most of the time, people tell me, Eric, I never have more than twice the amount of my Social Security in my account. Okay? So please don't worry about that, Colby. It's not going to happen. Okay. Now, when you send Ms. H says, when you send the cease and desist letter, is that considered an answer to a creditor on the senior's behalf, knowing there is a time limit to respond to them, and after they send a 1099-C, the IRS dismissed? No, it doesn't have anything to do with a 1099-C letter. Okay, so you bring up a 1099-C is if you owe a debt and you don't pay it, if it's over I think it's $600, technically a creditor is required at some point to send to the IRS what's called a 1099-C, which is a notice to the IRS saying that you didn't pay this debt, therefore you should pay taxes on it. Okay, and I've explained before that you shouldn't have a problem with the 1099-C. First off, if your only income is Social Security or Social Security and some other income and you're not required to file taxes because your income is so low, don't worry about the 1099-C. The IRS doesn't do anything. They can look on the computer and they can see that your income is small and that even if you did owe taxes, you could get on what's called currently not collectible status and you wouldn't have to pay it. Okay? So they don't follow up on 1099-Cs. For various reasons, a lot of creditors don't send 1099-Cs out. But let's say you have higher income and you're required to file tax returns and you got a 1099-C, then yeah, you can file there's a form with the 1099-C called a 982. And on the 982, on like the second box, you can click that. If you're insolvent, which means if your debt exceeds your assets and you're insolvent, there's no tax. Okay. But let's say you did owe taxes. Well, if your income is around $2,500 or even a little bit more or less, and you're single, or $3,500 or a little bit more or less, and you're married, should easily be able to qualify to get on what's called currently not collectible status with the IRS and not have to worry about paying taxes. So we just don't run into a problem with 1099-Cs with seniors. Okay. Everyone's asking about why this man's wages were garnished. Well, apparently he owed some debt and a creditor happened to know where he banked and they filed a writ of garnishment on his bank account. And I'm pretty sure the garnishment came in on Friday. Under the law, the bank has 2 business days, 48 hours, to examine your account to determine if the money came from a federal source. If it came from a federal source, then they automatically protect twice the amount of your Social Security, regardless of what funds are in, where the funds came from in your bank account. And what happened is it's going to turn out that the came in there on Friday, and the bank didn't look at it before the close of Friday, so his His bank was held up this weekend. He couldn't access his bank account this weekend. I told him that today they'll release it. Okay. If we ever have a question on this, it always comes with someone getting garnished on Friday. But most of the time when a bank gets a writ of garnishment, they examine your account within just a few minutes and release the money immediately. So please don't worry about your money being held up. They'll probably never even try to garnish your bank account. Remember, twice the amount of your federal benefit deposited in your bank account is automatically protected by your bank without you having to do anything. They'll do it on Friday to wreck your weekend. Well, I don't think they do it intentionally. Okay. But you're right. I guess it would wreck the weekend. It's Form 982, if I remember right. I did a video on this on YouTube Live on February 9th, I think 2 years ago, with my former partner, Rex Staines, or he's still my partner, I guess, Rex Staines. And you can look at that on February 9th, 2 or maybe even 3 years ago. Okay. And he talked to me on YouTube Live, and we talk all about 1099-Cs. So Robert says, I'm a member of HELPS. How can you get the IRS to put you on currently not collectible status? I'm on an IRS payment plan where I pay $100 a month, which I really can't afford. Oh, well, call us and we'll send you an email. Tells you how to do it. You know, it depends on your income. If you're single and your income is around $2,500 or less, maybe even a little bit more, depending on where you live, you can get on currently not collectible status. Now, the closer you are to the poverty line, like $1,500, you can get on it really easy, probably just over the phone. You call the IRS, you look on your tax notice up the right-hand corner, there's a number, call that number, you'll be on hold for an hour and a half or 2 hours. They're going to pick up the phone, you tell them you can't pay it anymore. And if you're closer to the poverty line, they'll just put you over the phone on currently not collectible status indefinitely. Okay? So if you're on a payment plan and you make the payment, you could just stop making the payment. Okay? And then what is the IRS going to do? Well, they may do nothing. The computer might show them eventually that, hey, he stopped making the payment, but this is his income. We're not going to do anything because it's so low. He can get on currently not collectible status. But the worst they would do is they'd send you a notice saying they intend to offset 15% of your Social Security, but they wouldn't do that till after 60 days. So it'd give you time to contact the IRS and get on currently not collectible status. If you can't afford to pay those taxes now, and then we could talk to you. We encourage people to pay their taxes if you can. I mean, you could pay them over a period of 5 years if you need to, or 6 years. But if you can't, the lawmakers set up the law to protect seniors, even from the IRS. Okay, so you can stop paying the taxes and get on currently not collectible status. So Mary kind of confirms what I said. I got a notice of garnishment in my checking account, but like Eric said, you get it back in your account. They don't take it out. They just put a hold on the account. But a lot of times I found this law's been in effect now since 2012, that it's just an instantaneous hold. They don't use the full 48 hours that they're allowed under the law to determine if the money came from a federal source. If they have an auto pay and the garnishment gets levied on your bank account, what happens if a bill like rent utilities are rejected? If there's an auto pay, I don't know how the banks do it. It's up to them. But I suspect if they got a writ of garnishment, like I said, most of the time they look at it instantaneously. Even though they technically have 48 hours, the law's been around. They're going to look at it and reject the garnishment, so the money's going to go through to pay these bills. Okay. How would we find out who sent a 1099-C to the IRS? Will they tell us, or there is a place to go? They're going to send you a copy. They send it to the IRS, and you get a copy of a 1099-C. So you've got that in hand to technically file with your tax return if you're required to file taxes. But like I said, if you're not required to file taxes, IRS isn't going to do anything about it. That's not their practice to do anything about it. Okay. So I did a video on Friday, and I talked about it last week, I think, too, with senior living on student loans. Talked about how last Tuesday or Wednesday, the education department came out and said, hey, we're not going to offset 15% of Social Security for past due student loans. We're going to put a stop. We're going to put a stay on that. And I did a video with Jeff Hoyt on senior living, and we talked about why they did that. And that'll come out probably in a few days, maybe out already. Jeff said when I talked to him, he said, Eric, we did a video on this earlier, a week or two before. May 5th, they announced that they were going to start offsetting 15% of Social Security for seniors that owed student loans. And how it was a bad idea. It was going to hurt a lot of people. And Jeff said, well, maybe they listened to us, Eric. I don't know. I got a feeling they got a lot of pushback from creditors, or from seniors who were calling their representatives, and they were scared about losing their Social Security. The other thing I told Jeff is, I'm not going to get political here, but Trump all along has had a thing about Social Security. He says, well, I don't want to tax Social Security. He's really adamant about people who are getting Social Security that shouldn't be entitled to it. But if you're entitled to your Social Security, it seems like he doesn't like people losing any of that. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe that was part of this, that maybe the thought went in, we don't want a lot of seniors who are getting Social Security to lose that Social Security, therefore we're going to put a stay. Now, we don't know what's going to happen, but if it does happen in the future that they can take 15% of Social Security, what we're hoping for is they streamline the process to protect Social Security for lower income seniors. That's the problem. It's a complicated process to stop Social Security being offset. But right now, if you're worried about it, you don't need to worry about it. They put a stay on it again. And I don't think you need to do anything. Let's just wait and see what happens. It's been a long time since they offset Social Security, since about 2018, for past due student loans. So that was good news. So Alan's going to ask me a question. He said, if I have my truck financed with Wells Fargo and haven't missed a payment, but I had a Wells Fargo credit card with them too, but Helps took care of that, but will Wells Fargo try to take my truck now, even with no missed payments? No, they will not. Okay? It's a completely separate loan. Okay? No, they won't take and when you pay the truck off, you'll get the title. You don't need to worry about it. Now, if you borrow money from a credit union, the story would be a little bit different. If you borrow money from a truck and a credit union finances it, then whether you realize it or not, when you signed the loan agreement with the credit union, you gave the credit union authority to hold the title if you owed them a debt for something else that you didn't pay, like a credit card. And they call it a cross-collateralization agreement. So if you have a debt owed to a credit union for a credit card and then a car loan, you pay the car loan and you don't pay the credit card, does it mean the credit union's going to repossess your car? Probably not. They don't do that. But if you go to get the title when the car's paid off, they're probably not going to give you the title because you still owe on that credit card. And the agreement you signed with the bank said that when you made that loan on the car, if you owe the credit union, if you owe the credit union other money, then you got to pay that other money before they're going to give you the title of the car. But not with a bank. Okay? We've got lots of videos with senior living. On a lot of topics. And I think we did one on debt management. Yeah, when you say consumer credit counseling or debt management or debt settlement companies. Coming up here, just to let you know, if you're a regular visitor to our channel, I'm hoping that Senior Living will do YouTube Live with helps at least once a week. And I'll let you know when that happens, if that happens. I hope it does happen. They have a bigger audience than we do, and a lot of people could benefit by learning some of this information that we talk about. How much money, so Chess asks, how much money can you make working without any being withheld, any problem with Social Security? Well, it depends on your age, Tess. I think you have to be like 66 in a few months. If you're younger than that and you're making too much in Social Security, too much in wages, then it could reduce the amount that you get in Social Security. But after a certain age, and it goes up a couple months every year, then it doesn't matter how much money you make. You get your full Social Security benefit. So if you're over 66, definitely over 67, then it doesn't matter what you make. Your Social Security wouldn't be withheld at all. So James saying that it's 67 now. I haven't kept track of that. Could be. Okay. I know for me, it was 66. And so that was quite a while ago. So I'm not surprised if it's 67 today. See, it's one of those little things that lawmakers have done to try to stretch Social Security out. There's a lot of talk about, well, Social Security is going to disappear in 9 years. Lawmakers are never going to let that happen. So what they do is they make adjustments to try to stretch things out. One of the adjustments they made is by saying, you get less Social Security unless you retire after you're a certain age. Okay. So this person calls us from Florida. They say, I need advice on $60,000 of credit card debt. I'm 82 years old and my wife is under 70. Only income is Social Security. The husband gets a small retirement. They have money with it. They have an account with debt settlement company. They don't need to pay the debt settlement company anymore. First thing I would ask them is, when you enrolled with the debt settlement company, did they tell you, by the way, all your income is, your Social Security is protected, so is your retirement. You don't need to pay any of this debt. You know what the answer will be? No, they never did tell me that, Mr. Olsen. Why didn't they tell you that? If they would have told you that, you wouldn't have enrolled with them and they wouldn't be making money off you. So, with few exceptions, probably no exceptions for debt settlement companies, and few exceptions with debt management companies, they don't tell seniors the complete truth. They don't tell seniors the fact that their income is protected, that it's available for their needs, and that they don't need to pay the debt. Nor do they tell them there's a way to stop the creditors from harassing. But you're going to hear that from us. That's what we do. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff that we're talking about, or you don't get the answer, you be sure and call helps, 855-435-7787. We don't turn anyone away that needs our help, okay? And you can look at all our YouTube videos. I talked to someone, it could have been today, earlier today. She actually got transferred to us from a debt management company, one of the few that refers their clients to helps. And her only income was about $1,000 a month. No, she had made more than that, living with her daughter. And she had like $40,000 worth of debt. And she was signed up with the debt management company and paying them $300 a month. And then she had heard about us, and she called and she wanted to know if we're legitimate. And I told her, of course we're legitimate. And I told her, I said, I gave her links. I said, look at our webpage, look at our YouTube videos. We're all over the internet, and explain what we do. And I said, I'm not going to enroll you now. I don't want to. I said, you've got to look at us, and you'll learn after you look at us and you look at the reviews and what we do. You'll realize that we are legitimate, and you don't have to pay this company any more money. And the sooner you do that, the better, because she couldn't afford to pay them what she was paying them. She needed the money for her needs. Even though she was living with her daughter, she was struggling. Okay? I recently received a letter from Topps Collection for a credit card account with exchange credit program. The letter says Topps can take. Now, I'm not sure who Topps is. Help me out. Now, if that is something that has to do with a military, okay, if like there's an exchange at a military base, then there is a possible way for that's a federal debt for them to offset 15% of Social Security. So we can, and if it was the military, they could theoretically do that. They'd have to give you notice of their intent to do that. Now, you could theoretically file bankruptcy and then wipe that debt out. That wouldn't happen. But you can call and we talk to you. Okay? So Brian says, I'm finally thinking about help sending a letter to Discover. I pay him $260 a month. I paid $1,000 so far. Still $5,000. Only worry is a debtor's exam. Don't worry about a debtor's exam. It's not going to happen, but even if it did, there's nothing to worry about. Your income's protected. No. For some reason, that word just strikes fear in people's hearts, and it shouldn't. So no, don't. Yeah, I mean, you can pay it if you don't, but you don't need to. So this person I talked to before, that she wanted to know about her credit. I said, we sent her an email. We have a program called 720 Credit Score with Phil Tyrone, and we don't help people rebuild their credit, but we pay a company that will help people rebuild their credit. If seniors are interested in that, a lot of them aren't, but some of them want to rebuild their credit. So we told this lady that I talked to, I said, you check us out and call back when you feel comfortable. Okay. Okay. So this morning I talked to a lady from Washington. She said her husband had kind of like pre-dementia, and they owned a home. They had some equity in it, and it looks like he was going to have to go into a facility. And she wanted the home to go to a daughter who was living with them and who had been helping take care of them. And I asked, I said, well, whose name is the home in? Is it in your name? And she said, yes. I said, is your husband's name on it? And she said, yeah. So both their names were on the home as joint owners with survivorship rights. And I said, well, it's going to be difficult you could add your daughter's name to the home as a joint owner with you and your husband. If he has dementia, his signature needs to be notarized. And she says, well, she says, I think that can be done. And I said, well, so what you're telling me is that it's not that advanced. And she says, no. And I said, that's great. Then what you and your husband could do is you could deed the home to you and your husband, and your daughter is joint tenants with rights of survivorship. That means if your husband passes away, then you and your daughter own it together. When you pass away, then it goes to your daughter. Or if you die before your husband, then it's going to be owned by the husband and the daughter. When he passes away, the home will go to the daughter. But I said, you don't want to wait too long. If he had really serious dementia, then a notary probably wouldn't, he has to be able to sign it. But if a notary saw that he wasn't competent, they might refuse to notarize his signature. And so I sent an email. It helps. We have a form email on protecting a home for children. Now that's not this. You don't do this in every state. Not every state you can do this in. Okay, or it's not always a good idea to do it. Okay, it depends. But for a lot of situations, it can solve a problem. That way, there would be no probate. When the last of them dies, then the property will automatically go to the daughter. Even if mom and dad later got a judgment against them for debt that they owe, when they die, when they pass on, the property will automatically go to the survivor, and the judgment lien disappears, as I explained earlier. Okay. Person writes in from Texas. I'm waiting until August to collect my full Social Security, working full time, but they are cutting hours, so I'm not able to pay my current debt. You can stop paying the creditors. You're going to go on Social Security in August. And you live in Texas. Even if they did sue you, they can't garnish your wages. But let's say you lived in another state. If you stop paying your debt, it'd probably take at least 6 months before any creditor would even think about just suing you. So just because you stop paying a debt doesn't mean you're going to get sued. And if you do get sued, doesn't mean it's going to happen. If you do stop paying a debt, doesn't mean you're going to get sued tomorrow if you're going to get sued at all. Generally it would be months down the road. Okay. How much does the company charge to help rebuild your credit? It's free for helps clients. I pay them a fee each month for them to handle it with our clients. It's called 7 Steps to a 720 Credit Score for Seniors with Phil Tyrone. We should have a video on my interview with him on our YouTube page. And we can send you, if you're a helps client or even if you're not a helps client, we can send you an email that has a link to a video where Phil and I talk about this program. Your credit is based on your recent credit history. So you can actually rebuild your credit. There's probably people listening to me now that have been through this program that will tell how it worked for them. Okay. A lot of our clients don't care about rebuilding their credit, but some of them want to, which is fine. So this person contacts us from Tennessee. Hold on. Okay. This is mainly for my 80-year-old father who has been served papers and agreed to pay out of fear while I was out of town. So this is a son watching out for his dad. They got him for $1,000 and a $67 per month payment on a Discover card that he was scammed on years ago, it says. I thought I had it handled and red flagged his Social Security, did all the right things. His house is falling in, I am on disability and can't afford to help. Yeah, he can stop. The dad doesn't have to pay that agreement that he made. He can stop paying that. His income's protected. We'll go over this with him. Just because you have an arrangement with a creditor to make payments and your role helps doesn't mean you have to keep making that payment. No, you can stop making that payment. Remember, your Social Security is protected. No one can touch it. The whole purpose of helps is if you ever have a question or concern, you pick up the phone and you call us, no matter how often. Don't need to worry. So this person calls us, says, I'm being harassed by a company called Unifin. Unifin. I don't know who they are. It's a debt collector, apparently. They have called my children frequently and me. Well, a debt collector can't be calling your kids. All they can do is call one time, and they can't identify themselves as a debt collector, and to find out where you're at. That's it. They have my phone number and email and address. I have told them to send me proof of the debt. All I get is the amount. I'm tired of their harassment. So would you please get involved and send them a letter about my fixed income? This could be from a client. Yeah, we'll call this guy back and we'll send him a cease and desist letter. Now, it could be a scammer that you're getting that's doing this. Sometimes, and a lot of times, scammers they don't care about the law. Okay, they just bottom line is if you're on Social Security, pension is protected. You don't need to worry. Okay, so this guy contacts us from Texas. Okay. He was in a car wreck when he was younger. And he didn't get the right treatment for the car wreck. He had a head injury. And because of that, he had to drop out of school. He had serious memory issues. People would talk to me and I did not know who they were. The person I was before the wreck is not who I am now. I've been on social SSI now for 37 years. So that was 37, almost 40 years ago when this happened. A few months ago, I began receiving letters about old student loans. They said they would report to credit bureaus. I'm not paid, but they already did that decades ago. Anyway, I exist on about $9.50 a month. There's nothing left at the end of the month to pay loans from an education I never benefited from. Boy, he writes a pretty nice email. I can't remember a lot of it. Being stuck on Medicaid, I have to go to doctor, and nowadays I don't even get to doctors, just nurses. None of them spend enough time getting to know my case, so how can I expect any of them to say I'm totally permanently disabled? I'm 64 now and have added health concerns such as kidney failure and other things. What can I do? Well, the first thing I tell him is that, like I explained at the beginning of this video, is that they're not going to take any of your Social Security for a student loan, at least not now. And if you're on SSD or SSI, you'll be able to go on get the student loans wiped out. He's on SSI. We'd talk to him and tell him what to do, but right now you don't even have to worry about it because they're not even going to take 15% of your Social Security. Don't need to worry. Is there a way with Phil Tyrone or some other way to get the bad reports off? The credit reports faster than waiting years? Yeah, absolutely. You know, your credit is based on your recent credit history. With Phil's program, within a year and a half, 2 years, you can get your credit up to a 700 credit score. Even though you got a bunch of debt, once they write it off, it becomes old, and then you rebuild your new credit, and it's based on your recent credit history. So even though you have old credit from 2 years back that you never paid, you can get your credit built up. It's crazy in some ways. It's based on your recent credit history. If it's old, it doesn't matter. And since about 2018, 2019, lawsuits and judgments aren't even on your credit report anymore. So you can rebuild your credit. So what if the other person dies without a lien on on jointly owned property. Not sure what the question is. What if the other person dies without a lien? Well, okay, if you own the property jointly together and the other person dies, then it's in your name only. Now, if you die, then it's in their name. Okay, and then if there was a judge, if let's say you have judgment liens against you, when you pass on, the judgment liens go away because the property transfers to someone else who doesn't have a judgment against them. Okay. There are a lot of seniors and others living and have to be harassed by creditors. Yeah, I know there are. That's why Helps is here. And you guys can help me get the word out by spreading what Helps does. Okay. So this person contacts us from the wonderful state of Oregon. I have too much loan and credit card debt, and at the age of 79, I'm realizing that I have no hope of paying it off. I've never missed a payment, but it's gotten to the point that I just can't keep up with increasing minimum payments due and incredibly high interest rates. I've been on disability income since I was 55 and have been on SSI since 65. My Social Security income is minuscule. My partner doesn't get much either. I was told by a bankruptcy lawyer that filing for Chapter 13 would not be a good idea because there is now too much equity in the house. My partner and I both have our names on the house. My partner is also disabled. My partner has a son who would inherit the house, so we can't do a reverse mortgage. I just don't know what to do. Were you going to call us? We're going to go over this with you. Okay? No one can touch the Social Security. No one can take your home. Even if someone gets a judgment against you, they can't take your home. Apparently, you own the home free and clear. You're not going to need to worry. You can stop paying the debt. Okay. So this person contacts us from California. How are we doing on time? Got a few minutes. My husband lost his job a couple of years ago, and we've been trying to pay off our debt, but it's just too much. My husband gets Social Security and retirement from his job. I receive Social Security disability and some other payments. Before the job loss, we were 100% on time with our debts, but we lost a big portion of our income with my husband's job loss. He was making over $100,000 a year back then. So we were trying to survive on half of that with what income we have. We were still paying on our home, and we have credit cards that are still paid on time and in good shape. Managed to pay off one car, have 1.5 years left on the husband's car. We're embarrassed on it by how many credit cards we had, but we need help and we can't worry about being embarrassed. We've been served notice by a creditor, so we need help. And yeah, if you're having these problems like this couple is, you call us on the phone, we'll go over your situation. Sometimes people call us 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times with their questions. We answer the questions, and when they decide to enroll, they can enroll in Helps. We enroll people over the phone. We never turn anyone away. You give us the creditors you owe money to, we're going to send a cease and desist letter. They're going to leave you alone. And we represent you ongoing so you never have to deal with collectors again. Okay? Joe asked, how likely is it for Discover to sue? They're one of the more likely, they sue more often than about any other debt creditor. But that shouldn't mean that you should pay them if your income's protected. If they sue you, you're not going to need to go to court. You don't need to worry. See, the reason they sue is they want people to be scared that they're going to get sued so that they pay them when they won't pay someone else. So when you pay them and not pay someone else, you're kind of buying into their schematic of what they intend to do. So this guy calls us, it's near the end here. He says, I'm 70 years old and need help with borrowed money from a payday loan, though I'm not sure if you help seniors from Alaska. Thank you. This was on a question on one of our videos. And I said, we help seniors from Alaska, all 50 states. Call anytime. 855-435-7780. Doesn't matter where you live. We help people in Guam, Philippines, Thailand, islands in the Mediterranean, Colombia, Puerto Rico. I don't care. If you're an American citizen or any of the 50 states, don't need to worry. So I'll end up with this comment. It says, this person contacts us from Missouri. I'm interested in finding out more information. I have approximately $14,000 in credit card debt that I incurred during the pandemic. My only income source is from Social Security and a pension. Your income's protected, so is your pension. You don't need to pay the debt. If you don't want to be harassed by the creditors or debt collectors, call helps. You can enroll in our program. We don't turn anyone away. The cost, if you pay, is minimal. And we're your client literally, you're our client literally forever, so that you never have to deal with collectors again. That's what we do. We're the only law firm I'm aware of in the nation that does this. A lot of seniors need this help, aren't aware of it. If this isn't for you, but remember what we do, and you can share this information with others. We do the YouTube live Monday through Thursday, same time. And so I will talk to you tomorrow, Tuesday, and we'll have some more things to go over. If you have any questions in the meantime, call us. Please press the like button. Please subscribe to our channel. More people find out about helps from our YouTube videos than any other source. So thanks for participating today, and everyone have a great day.